Thank you. It's great to be here. So many friends here from all different walks of legal life. So it's definitely a pleasure. We are a big fan of Clio and have our firm working away on it. I'm here today to talk to you about digital marketing, particularly local. 10 years ago, when I decided to start a law firm with a college law school buddy, we sat down and said, okay, what can we do differently? And at the time, the web was just becoming a thing, and my partner looked at me and said, well, nobody's ever going to hire a lawyer online, so I don't know what you're going to bring to the table. But essentially, I said, let's give this a shot. And he was a really well-known criminal defense lawyer in the DC area, and we built one website, and it did well, and then we built a second website and hired an associate, and 10 years later we have 30 lawyers doing everything from PI and criminal to trust and estates and qui tam. And really what we focused on is how can we connect directly with consumers, people in need of legal services, in a way that reaches out to them. Our last speaker talked about millennials and what are they looking for. The question is, what is the person in need? And one of my mentors says that in one sense, as consumer-facing lawyers, we are really closer to plumbers than we are lawyers. If the water heater explodes in your basement and the significant other is yelling at you to get it fixed, the first person who can, answers the phone and can explain to you what they're going to do and give you a reasonable price is going to get that business. And we have tried to meld the legal excellence with this direct response and working with digital. So this area, there's a lot of different, schools of thought, and there's a lot of people out there with, selling different things. My goal today is to walk you through the fundamentals. To give you both what's happening sort of cutting edge as well as some of the basics. I know that for some of you, I'm going to lose you along the way. Please feel free to ask questions as we go. We don't have to wait till the end because I'd rather keep you with us. But really, my purpose here today is several-fold. For many of you guys who are doing this yourselves, hopefully you can take some nuggets away. It may sort of make your head explode, but if you get 2 or 3 nuggets that you can go back and improve your web presence and your ROI, great. If you're using an outside group, this is something that helps you educate you. Like everything else, whether it's buying malpractice insurance or credit card processing, you often feel like you have to become a mini expert in those areas. So my goal today is to walk you through this and at least empower you with the basics, to sort of a checklist to bring back for yourself or for your team to make sure that you're getting what you need and can ask some questions and hopefully move the needle forward. So just to make sure that we're on the same page semantically, this is not sort of in the right order. We have paid ads, Google AdWords or PPC, a very important part of this process, but not what we're going to focus on today. This is the pay-per-click part of Google. As you can see, over the last year, they've moved from 3 to 4, pushing the organic further down, meaning that it is something that if you're not watching, is something you should be watching, because as they push, Google wants to make more and more money, they're going to focus more and more on how do they get you here. But in general, from my point of view, the more, especially for people outside of the PI space, the ability to get return on investment from the organic is something that is very often untapped, and it can be done partially through sweat equity, and we'll talk about that today. There is the local component, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, which is the map or the 3-pack, the organic search, and then the knowledge panel, which is sort of the newest area that Google has brought together, allowing you to demonstrate and put forth information to the public about what you're doing. So in the paid ads, the biggest takeaway is that it's taking up more and more real estate. There are things that when you do pay-per-click, you should just make sure that you have phone number extensions and that you're targeting keywords in your area, making sure if you're a local player, that you're not paying for clicks outside of your geography, because clearly those are not going to monetize. If you're sitting in this market where we are right now, and you do a non-modified search, meaning you don't have the name of your city or town there, and your name comes up, that's a bad thing. You don't want to be getting clicks from outside of your market unless somebody intends to be there. So that's a big mistake that people make that should be avoided. This is the sort of home run. I show this to you just so you have something to aspire to. There's the 3-pack, but occasionally, if you can deliver a result that's so good that Google says, this is the answer to somebody's question, they'll give you what I call a 1-pack. And that allows for your listing. In a major market, this is not going to happen, but in a smaller town where you're one of several people, if you can demonstrate to Google, and Google's philosophy is they're trying to get the very best results for people. How can they give people what they're looking for as quickly as possible? And if you're able to demonstrate that, this is sort of the ultimate level of SEO where you can get yourself shown as the only result on the knowledge graph. Okay. So local ranking. So we're not going to be talking about paid today, we're going to be talking about local. There are two components of that for most people in the room. There is, on the left, we have the map or the 3-pack, and on the right, what's below that is the organic. And there's a lot of overlap of how these things will be determined by Google, the algorithm, but specifically, the ranking signals for the business side come through the Google My Business profile that everybody has. They've changed their name a number of times over the years from Google Places and now Google My Business, but suffice it to say that filling that out, claiming your profile, the very, very basics are really important. And that reviews, which we'll talk about in a little bit, while significant, right now are not a ranking factor, but a conversion factor. When you have really great reviews, it may not push you to the top of that 3-pack, but if you do get in there and you have great reviews, definitely a conversion factor. On the right-hand side, the organic, this is what we're going to talk about today as far as content and links, making sure you have as much information as possible to give that good user experience to get yourselves pushed up in the search rankings. So here is the Google My Business listing as it exists today. Having just been on the West Coast with Google, this is an area they're putting a lot of time and attention to. It's one of the few areas that is not stabilized and has evolved of late, and that what Google has done is they are starting to build out features that are rolling out. So what I'm going to talk about now is what's cutting edge and happening. It may not be in your market. So if you go back and say, I can't find it today in my market, keep an eye out because these things are coming. But this is the sort of ultimate place, the ultimate business card. When somebody gets there online, photos, you can even, through Google, find local photographers that will come and take photos of your office, which will then connect from Street View to your, through Street View onto your page here, giving people a full sort of, this is how you get there, and this is what the office looks like. So if you have a nice office, definitely, it's not very expensive. A few $100s can be a really powerful, a very powerful conversion factor. But these features keep coming out, and definitely stay tuned. So the Google My Business Post, this is one of the new features that they've just rolled out. Again, not in all markets, but it allows you to put something up that shows on both desktops and mobile about 7 days. You can include a link to the site. Again, any links you can get, but it's really powerful if there's something that's topical for people in immigration law. Stuff's changing, sadly, every day. Being able to post, we just had raids announced in Northern Virginia. Anything you could do to connect with consumers and give that extra value, Google's giving you an opportunity within the posts. Google messaging. This is pretty interesting. So a lot of people here, how many people here have chat on their websites? Okay, this is Google's version of chat. They are going to allow for you to directly connect, just like they do for hotel reservations, airplane reservations. You're going to be able to connect directly with law firms. They're telling me that they're going to have a third-party call center that you can pay or have it come directly to your office. But this is something, again, that Google is trying to keep as much time within their environment as possible, and so that if they can get it so that somebody stays on Google, speaks to your people, and makes an appointment, that's more time on Google and something that they want. Definitely a very powerful tool that if it's in your market, you should be taking a look at. And then appointment setting, a direct contact form. Again, this has been used in other industries. They're pushing into legal the way they have into home improvements and others. Let's hope it doesn't go too far because they've actually started to take over real estate in the 3-pack in home improvements for their own listings. But for now, they're allowing lawyers to make appointments directly from their Google My Business. Any questions so far? So reviews. Reviews are the bane of everybody's existence, but a necessary evil, and when done right, as you know, can be extremely powerful. So again, monitor your reviews. Constantly look to make sure that everybody in your office is on the same page. If you can get positive reviews, the results are tremendous. Again, it's not a ranking factor, but if you can pre-sell somebody based not on what you're saying, but what happy clients are saying, incredibly powerful. The downside is paying for reviews. Do not do that. And that negative reviews, everybody's going to get one over time, making sure that you deal with it in a smart way. Remember, everybody who's practicing law is bound by attorney-client privilege. Just because a client decides to talk about their case doesn't give you permission to do so. So one way to get in extreme hot water, if not even worse, is to engage. So I sort of have created a 24-hour rule. If we get a negative review, we immediately, don't fire off something, don't post it online, but wait 24 hours till cooler heads prevail, figure out if there's anything we can do to make that client happy. But bottom line is, don't do something that jeopardizes your license. A lot of schools have thought of how to deal with them, as far as, are you going to reach out to the person? Are you going to put a response there if you can't somehow connect with that person? But whatever you do, don't disclose attorney-client privilege. So we're talking about getting into the 3-pack here. And one of the areas that's different than traditional organic search is citations. Citations are your name, address, and phone number, or NAP. So people who have moved from one location to another, somebody who's lost a partner, or changed the name of their firm, or if you've changed phone numbers, these can cause problems because if your NAP, or name, address, and phone number, are not consistent across the web, different places from Yelp to Google to different directories to bar listings, if your name, address, and phone number are not consistent, that is a negative factor that will hurt you from appearing in the 3-pack. So one of the things to do is be cognizant of, have you moved? There are 2 services that I'll mention, Yext and Moz Local. They're both paid services, and they can help you straighten that out and build legitimate citations. Word to the wise, which is Yext, which is a great tool, but it is something like a drug that you have to keep taking. The moment you stop paying Yext, the suppressions that they are doing for your old addresses or phone numbers pop back up. So if you go into it, understand this is not a short-term thing you're going to try. You're either doing it or you're not doing it. There's nothing wrong with doing this yourself. You can Google your old phone number, your old address, or old name, find these, and by hand go back. Nothing better than doing this by hand. And this is not a substitute for doing it by hand, but for many of you in lesser competitive markets, these tools can give you the bump that you need to get yourself into that 3-pack. So SEO fundamentals. So these fundamentals apply not only to the organic, but where you appear in that 3-pack. So the 3-pack has a dual algorithm with the name, address, and phone number and other local ranking signals, as well as traditional organic signals. So you get a double whammy if you're able to sort of master these. We'll talk about them each in order. Content first. So content is something that everybody here can do. If you have a website, the ability to generate content at a high quality is really one of the 2 main factors, content and links, that Google is looking for. So that as you write content and you put yourself on a calendar, this is something, even with limited resources, that I've seen people get remarkable results. But the key is writing about what you want to be found for. And we'll talk a little bit later about other ways to write content, but if you're in Alabama and you want family law cases, making sure you're writing about Alabama family law cases. If you write about current trends nationally, that is less likely to get you the search traffic that's going to monetize versus ones that get traffic. Now, traffic is great, and it has an SEO ranking effect, but in general, for everybody here with limited time and resources, writing content for what you want to be found for, extremely important, because that's what's going to, the search engines are going to crawl, have relevant pages, so when people search for things that you can make money from, the pages will come up. And if you write about things, for instance, in the PI space about a dangerous intersection, while that's interesting, it's certainly not going to make you money the way that if you have a geo-modified term married to a particular type of injury that you want to be found for. So going local with content, looking at the areas you're in and you serve. It's going to be tough without an office in that area, but it's going to be impossible without local content. So looking at content and figuring out where you want to find cases and thinking below the statewide level. It's one thing to have sort of like, hey, I'm a Florida trust and estates lawyer. That's great. But most of the search traffic is going to come locally, and the more you dig that you create that content locally, the better chance of getting the traffic that you're looking for. And that if you actually use the locations, not just, again, what not to do, What not to do is copying and pasting the information from page to page. That's a bad thing. Duplicate content is a no-no in the eyes of Google, but if you're able to take the content for each location and modify it, describing what that county is like, is it conservative, what are the judges like, anything you can do, because very often the law is going to be the same statewide. So you're like, hey, what can I write differently here? But anything you do that shows local knowledge, extremely valuable at showing Google you're an authority, and if they see you as an authority, you're going to rank higher than if you just have general information that's sort of cut and pasted across the different cities and counties. And I think that as you dig into this, it is something that sadly is very hard to scale. Very often you or possibly your staff will know this. It's very hard to outsource those local nuances, because those local nuances are one of the few ways that you can differentiate what essentially seems like the same information city by city or county by county. But if you can dig deep and get those different nuances, it definitely pays dividends. So sophisticated content. This is something that Google has been moving towards. If you go back 5 years, people might try getting your content written overseas. That's long gone. Google has figured out what is good content. They have gotten patents on different linguistic algorithms. They are going to figure out if you have spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, what grade level you're writing to. The bottom line is, if you have great content, it's going to make a difference, and if you're able to scale that, even better. But I'd rather see less great content than a whole bunch of crap, because people with thousands of pages of content on their website that's really subpar, not going to move the needle. In fact, it can hurt you. It can weigh down the site. But so whenever I get a new site for our SEO company and somebody comes to me, what we do is immediately triage the site. We look at every page, which I recommend you do for yourself every year or two. Take every page and look at it. Is it a check plus page, you're thrilled, you're proud of it? Is it a check page that might need a little bit of refreshing? Or is it a check minus page where it's really problematic? It's not something you're proud of. It may be too short, thin content. Try to keep the pages at 500 words or more. If you have a bunch of 250 word pages, maybe combining them into one good page instead of two non-great pages. But basically continuing to upgrade that content. Don't look at it like, hey, I wrote the content, it's gone. But refreshing the content that you have is really valuable. Google's crawling your website. In a perfect world, if you really want to compete in a sophisticated market, you're doing a page or two of content a day. If you're not in a sophisticated market, just upgrading the content, just editing it, those changes will get recrawled and show that there's life to the site, bringing Google back. That's really important as far as that whole algorithm to get you further up in the searches. So how do you do that? Part of this is just, many of you guys are great writers, that's wonderful, but if you have people on your team working with you, making sure that they're not being overly technical, checking for spelling and grammar, all really important. There are two apps that I'll mention here, Hemingway and Grammarly. These are just tools that you can use as a checks and balances. Where do you stand? Are you presenting the user with information in a clean, concise way that both the user loves and gives them a great user experience, as well as the Google bot? When the Google bot comes through, you want to be able to be proud of what you're presenting, and that Google should know that you're an authority from your writing as well as other outside signals. And then this is sort of the penultimate, is becoming a thought leader. I don't know if Miriam Sadiq's in the room. She had a blog that was one of my favorites in the criminal defense space. There are ways to take the writing and create thought leadership. Now, I think it's a double-edged sword, and you have to be careful. First, you have to like writing. If you don't love writing, you're never going to do this. But if you love writing and you can do this, my one word of caution is make sure what you're writing about is going to make you money, unless you just love it as a hobby. But if you're a local single event player, meaning you can only make money within a 10-mile radius of your office, having a national fandom may or may not work. For Mitch Jackson, who does a great job with video, in California, there are a lot of referrals into California. That may make sense for him. But if you're a family law lawyer in a third-tier market, having a national presence may not be a good ROI in terms of time. So this is something, if you have a niche that has a national, that you can do nationally, awesome, but just be careful that you're not putting so many resources into something that can't get you a return on investment when it comes to time. Any questions on content before we turn to links? Have I lost everybody? Sure.
You talk about a landing page. Does that have to be separate from a subpage on your website, or is that, can you use that subpage on your website?
The question is landing page versus subpage. I think they're one and the same. So you have your home page, which is probably the most powerful page you have on the site because the majority of links that you get naturally will be coming there. So one off that, so if you have different areas of practice or different geographies that you're trying to hit, one of the things you can do is create subfolders. The first page of each of those subfolders will be a landing page. And that one of the sort of techniques that can be used is not just writing one page of content for what you want to be found for, that sounds obvious, but creating 10 supporting pages to that landing page, and then over time, different supporting pages to those 10 subpages, so that you have a pyramid of content all pushing back to the top so that Google sees you don't just have one page of content on that area, but an entire library of information, all focused back to that point. And then with outside signals coming in, that's sort of the game that you're playing to push yourself up. The advantage of doing that is you not only have that landing page, but the supporting pages become long tail search pages where you can pick up traffic for terms other than sort of the money term that you're going for. Cool. Question?
More about the content and localizing. What if we practice in 2 different states and you end up, it's difficult, you're limited at times with what you can localize to depending on how your
Well,
website is.
I would recommend 2 subfolders for just that reason. I mean, that's sort of, you want to make sure that you do have for state A information in state B. You don't want to generalize because then you can't really dig deep and give any specific information. So that would be a great example. A decision that's at a higher level that you're going to have to come to terms with is the home page is very valuable real estate as far as search. So something we did, because we have DC, Maryland, Virginia in our metro, we actually chose to have none of them to our homepage, but actually build the subfolder for each of those places and then build under it. You're giving something up, but you're also not confusing Google where it might only give you the one that's on the homepage and not those subpages. So I think the general brand on the homepage and then a subfolder for each state would be in order to not confuse anybody and give the best user experience.
Back to that, if you practice in 2 areas, would it be a better idea or a comparable idea to have one website for one state and one for the other?
The question is for 2 different practice areas, 1 versus 2 websites. Great question. If you went back a few years, you'd say multiple websites. That was the rage. People had microsites. Google is pushing so much to brand that unless you have a huge amount of resources, the idea right now, Google is pushing you to a single website. The exception being, if your areas of practice are so opposite that you're going to hurt conversion, for instance, let's say you have a personal injury practice and a trust and estates practice. Somebody who's going for a will probably doesn't want to see that you're really a personal injury firm, so that's one where you might pull it out. But if it's personal injury and workers' comp, nobody's going to be offended that you have those together. The closer ones may be criminal defense and personal injury. I think you have to decide from a resources perspective, it is infinitely easier to rank one site with different folders. However, from a conversion point of view, you may be giving something up, and you have to balance those two factors.
On your homepage?
No factors for yourself. Are you willing to lose somebody potentially because they want somebody who only does one area of law? Through search, they're going to get to the right page, and you can try to control it so that if you have those 2 subfolders, one for practice area B and one for practice area C, great, but there could be a point where if those 2 areas aren't ones that people want to see together, that could be a problem. If not, then certainly one site right now is what Google is favoring and pushing you towards and rewarding you as far as building your brand with a single site.
You're using the term subfolders. Are you talking about menu items?
It could be through your menu, but just the way that your website is laid out, that you'll have an entire folder, almost a site within a site. I don't recommend subdomains that were popular a number of years back. This is a single URL / practice area A / practice area B, and then within that, everything else would fall under those terms. So link building, this is the other half when it comes to content links. Anything you can do to show authority. Everybody, many of you guys are quoted in local press, you're involved in the community. Google is trying to figure out who is authoritative in a particular area. And if you're able to demonstrate your authority through links, that's incredibly powerful. So one of the things that you should be doing is cultivating authoritative backlinks. Not an easy thing. It's something that, again, we talked about millennials just before this. It's something that millennials are particularly good at because they're used to this economy of information sharing. There's nothing better than a link from a local TV station or newspaper where you've been interviewed. My feeling is if our attorneys are spending their time and effort to produce content for news stations, that the sort of quid pro quo is a link back. FYI, places that will give you a link back, for instance, the Wall Street Journal and CNN, the New York Times and Washington Post, for example, almost impossible. Local papers should. I mean, you're part of the community. It should be a holistic thing where you're giving information and they're providing a resource to who's talking about it. Whatever it is that you're doing, from Google's point of view, while in theory they know information that doesn't have links, links are incredibly valuable in the algorithm to determine where your site ranks. And the more you can demonstrate to Google that you're an authority through links, the higher you're going to rank, the more traffic you're going to get to your site. Yes? I'm talking about to the website right here. So I look at, everything I'm talking about is pushing your website up. Links will work. If you put links to a Facebook or a LinkedIn page, those will certainly rise. I look at it like I want people coming to my property, so I have LinkedIn, Facebook all pointing back to the website. And there are many different ways. Facebook and LinkedIn can be tremendous traffic generators, but in the business to consumer space, the end user is generally going to get to your website before making a decision as to whether to call or whether to buy. And so I want everything pointing back to the property that you own and control.
So do you have a news you can use link on the website? Where do you put it on the website?
These are links from other sites coming to you. Wherever they'll give it to you. So the homepage, if they're giving it there, if you have a situation where it's a specific, and we're talking about different ways of obtaining these links, if you can find a way to get a link to a page, that then demonstrates authority from that other site that they trust what you're saying from their site into yours. So, for instance, I don't know if any of you guys have ever tried infographics, so I'll come to you in one second. These are things you can put on your site that people will be interested in. For example, I'll give you gun laws, hot button topic. There are people passionate on both sides of the issue. These are things that you can put on your site that people find interesting. Most likely they're going to link directly back to the page with the infographic. Other times you're on the news, most likely they're going to link to your homepage or to your bio page, or ideally both, because they're trying to show this is who's talking about the topic that they're reporting on.
You kind of answered my question, but the links coming to your site, as long as they're all to the same domain, or could it be different landing pages?
Different landing pages, it should be natural. You don't want something that looks unnatural. So most people are going to want to go to your homepage because that's sort of like the premier piece of your site. But if you're trying to rank for, we were talking about before, the subpages or subfolders, or you have two states, you now have the job of making each of those landing pages for state A and state B. You need to get those to rank, so you can't forget those. So I recommend, when you do get quoted by somebody and you did somebody a favor, or you're dealing with a colleague in the community who's linking to you, having them link to pages strategically so that you can spread the love and not just have it going to your homepage, but to other pages that are making you money. Now, just so you know, links to the homepage also help the whole site. So it comes to the homepage, and that authority gets sort of diffused and sent down to the rest of the site. But very specifically, links to direct pages you want to get traffic for are very important. They're harder to get because it's harder to get people to send it to an internal page, and that's why things like infographics can be incredibly powerful, because you're giving somebody a reason to link to the page that you're looking to get links for. Question? Very often, like universities, so like, everybody's like, oh great, I'm going to go post on job boards at universities. Those are not going to really help you very much. So behind paywalls, they won't. A lot of them, like the Wall Street Journal, may still come out, even though you have to pay for the article, they're going to make the whole thing searchable. And so very often so the Wall Street Journal is one, I want the link no matter what, but it's a good point, which is noticing where you're getting links, understanding that there are two types of links. There are follow and do not follow links, and the do not follow links still have value. For instance, Wikipedia is all do not follow. Huffington Post and a number of other magazines recently online have gone to no follow links. There's still value in them, but and Google is sort of, you're telling them not to index that page that's being sent to, but Google does what it wants to. So even if it's no index, no follow, there could be value, but spend more time on the follow links because those are more powerful, unless it's from one of those massively authoritative websites. Local link building. So look, not everybody here is going to be able to get CNN or Wall Street Journal linked to them. There are plenty of local people out there that will link to you. If any of you guys are doing community service projects, having scholarships, running 10Ks, anything you're doing for your practice in the community, these links may not be as valuable in the sense that they are not high page ranking, authoritative news sites, but local businesses show that you're in that local area and that you're relevant to the local searches you want to come up for. So even though you don't have the firepower to get massive national links, these are incredibly important as far as trying to generate the authority locally that you're looking for, because that's what's going to make you money, is people looking for things locally. And if you're able to sort of cultivate local relationships, that is, one of the areas that sweat equity can do. A Chamber of Commerce, other businesses, looking for areas, just as a sort of a footnote, where people are not putting something up short-term about your site, but a blog from a restaurant is more powerful than somebody having a link up for a month. So if you have something that remains with the site, that link stays evergreen, may get pushed down, but at least you're keeping that link, versus somebody who puts a promotion that you have or a race that you're running that disappears afterwards. I'd say one of the areas that we have done, we sort of have transformed our link building, has been looking at things that before were just feel-good activities. And instead of just throwing a 10K race for our firm, we would bring local businesses into the fold and make them part of it and allow them to register and offer them the ability to co-sponsor a race for no money, as long as they were participating with that authority link building that we were looking for. So links, that for some of you guys, this is sort of, what are these things? So if you have somebody doing SEO for you, this is the great tool. There are a couple of them out there, but Ahrefs, you can usually do 1 or 2 searches for free and then they charge you afterwards. But this is, if you want to know what's pointing at your website, this tool is wonderful, and it could show you, A, what you have, B, if somebody tells you they're doing SEO and you don't have any links coming in, there's something sorely missing. So if you're paying for SEO and they're not getting you any links and they're not building you any content, that's not really SEO in my opinion. So Ahrefs is a great equalizer where you very quickly and easily can determine what is pointing at your site. And you may look at it and say, I see this here, maybe this gives you an idea of 2 or 3 other things that you could ask for or get. So before we leave links, any other questions? Okay, technical SEO. So this is where I start to glaze over. So what I'm going to talk to you here about is a checklist to bring back. I understand the odds of there being a single coder in the room is negligible, but it's important that you have this knowledge so that you can ask, what about this, what about that? So schema. Don't have the time, and you guys aren't going to follow this, but I want you to make sure, is schema markup being used for your website? It's an important tool, one that Google allows to signal different things like reviews and locations. Optimizing your metadata. Now, this is something you guys could do for yourselves. The question is title tags and descriptions. This is not new. This has been around for a long time, but it's very often underutilized. So if you do, I think it's a Control-U, and you see the code on your site, and you do a Control-F to be able to figure out where the title tag is, making sure the name of your firm is not your title tag. That is a bad use of space. The title tag is your place per page, homepage being very important, for you to say to Google, this is what this page is about. They allow you 66 characters. Yahoo Bing is a little bit longer, but bottom line is you want to be able to say this type of law in this area is what this page is about. And to leave that untapped is a sin. It's free, it should be done. If you have WordPress, you have access to it yourself, but bottom line is it should not be overlooked. It's really important that you are very clear to Google about what the page is about. The content is going to read the words, but to give up and not focus on title tags, headings, and meta descriptions. These are the different elements that allow you to signal it's about, the page is about this topic, here are the sub things. It's almost like a table of content. And if you're able to use this and leverage it, it can give you results that, in non-competitive markets, this can really move the needle and allow you to trump somebody else where they're just using their firm name, because Google already knows who you are. Like, it knows the website's you, it knows the firm name. The key is, can they know that the area of law you do in your geography, that's really what you're trying to get it to do, and these are incredibly important tools to use for it. Okay, so there are two things on here. I'm going to skip over AMP for time, which is just a mobile protocol that I'm not necessarily advocating, but this piece right here, the HTTPS, okay, this used to be complicated, is now a very inexpensive, maybe $20 certificate that allows you to tell Google it's a secure site. Google is getting ready soon to actually put a label saying an unsecure site if you do not do this, and it's something that you'll feel naked in a number of months if it's not being done. It's really pretty easy to get done, so put it on your list as sort of a checkbox, because I'd rather not have people out there with websites that sort of that's a no-brainer to get fixed, and show Google that it's there. They're confirming that a ranking boost is coming. Originally, it was sort of like looked upon as something that you only needed for somebody who was doing e-commerce with credit card processing. Since that is not what anybody here, or the majority of people here, are doing, people said, oh, I don't need to do it. It's now time to look at it because it's really an essential factor. So, any questions on the technical piece? Okay, trends to watch. So, voice search. How many people here have an Alexa? How many have a Google appliance? So right now, you can see the Alexa is the dominating search piece. Alexa pulls from Yahoo Bing. The Google appliance obviously pulls from Google. The key here, and I could tell you for my 10 and 8-year-olds, they use this thing incessantly, whether they're listening to the Hamilton soundtrack through Prime or checking their math homework. People are requesting questions through voice more and more. For anybody with a Droid phone, I have a Pixel, the voice is so sophisticated that it knows what I'm trying to say even when I don't say it properly. So the key here, what's the takeaway? People are starting to search differently, and if you are able to create the long-term and long-tail answers to the questions that people are asking, that's going to be a benefit going forward. Long tail's always been important, but people are asking questions slightly differently. It's not a huge change, but it's significant, and that's where the long tail search and the more extended format writing comes in, because you can have more permutations of the writing. Basically, this is something that everybody here could do pretty easily, is check the page speed of your website. This is sort of something that most people are guilty of. Looking at page speed on both a desktop, but almost more importantly on mobile. It's really important that your page speed doesn't suck. You know how frustrating it is when you're looking at your phone and your pages aren't loading. If you're able to get that page speed super fast, it's a ranking factor. Basically, it's not a good user experience if it takes forever to launch. If Google sees that, they're going to penalize those sites. So looking at what's there, what are you usually guilty of when there's bad page speed? Very often it's photos. You have a beautiful photo of a skyline of yourself. Make sure the photos are compressed. Look at page speed. Improve it. Look at it again. It's a constant battle. Every time you get some cool new fancy piece on your website, that's great. But again, you got to keep in mind that if it doesn't load quickly, people are going to get fed up and they're going to move on. And thinking mobile first. This is something we hear, mobile, mobile, mobile. When I was out at Google, it sounds obvious, but we're now way over 50% of people looking at mobile. If you have a Hispanic practice through immigration or otherwise, it's probably way in excess of 50%. The key is that you're looking at mobile not just as a secondary factor. Many of us sit in front of our computers and talk to our web team about what to change or do it yourself. having a Droid out, having an iPhone in the office, whichever one you don't use, get an old one. Look at it on those devices. Is it coming up right? Because so many of your users are coming through this. If you're not actually focusing on this, you're giving up traffic because other people will be, and making sure that your designs are responsive, that everything looks great, whether it's mobile, whether it's on a tablet, or whether it's on a desktop. But remembering that Google is putting in protocols, and they're going to be looking more and more at how are you optimizing, and they may start soon looking at mobile and how you're optimized on mobile even before the protocol for desktop. So here are just a couple of my favorite little toys and apps that are out there that might be of use for some of you guys. One of my favorites that I think would be really beneficial for many people in the room is 99 Designs. If you're doing a branding exercise, whether it be business cards or letterhead, it allows you to do a RFP with designers all over the world. You put some money up, a few $100s. You can even take the finalists of what you want your design to be, and you can use that as a way to poll your friends, whether through Facebook or client base. You can get people involved in that whole branding exercise. Screaming Frog is one of those tools with incredible amounts of data for SEO. Yoast at the bottom right is a plugin that that is one of the great SEO plugins that are out there. And if you are to take any of this seriously and you want to do outreach in the community and you're trying to track who are the people that have responded to your requests to possibly link back to you and who haven't, BuzzStream is a great tool for that. So I will conclude with, this is ever changing. I geek out on this. Feel free to email me or call me because I love talking about this stuff. But if you want to sort of just keep up to date as to what's happening and what the trends are, these are sort of the leading online journals and publications that I've found really useful for not just helping me figure out what's here, but what is going to come, and that anytime you can get a small advantage over your competition, obviously a big deal. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I'm happy to take any questions.